Welcome to the second talk of this morning. I'm very pleased to have Zoë Kooyman here. Zoë is the Executive Director of the Free Software Foundation. Very graciously accepted our invitation to speak here. We were thinking that, very often we talk about the use of this Haskell programming language in the context of industry. And I feel that it would be a nice balance to talk about how we can use it also in other sort of settings. And I see most of us are also have these sorts of thoughts as well. So I thought it would be nice to invite Zoë over to just talk about it and also answer questions maybe, have a bit of a discussion, something like that. Yeah, thank you very much, Zoë, for coming. And yeah, please.
Well, thank you for having me. I have my microphone on a little bit weird, so if you lose my sound, let me know. It's a little big for my ears. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a philosophical journey today that brings you back to actually a lot of people here use the term open source and work with open source, but I'm going to bring you back to why we do what we do and how we got here. Can I just get a little inventory on how many people here use the term free software? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, for you, then actually this talk might be more of a confirmation than a sort of backtrack and educational, but let's see where we go. So I work for the Free Software Foundation, and the Free Software Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's based in Boston in the US. There are also a Free Software Foundation Europe and a Free Software Foundation Latin America. And at the FSF, we want all computer users to be able to do everything they need on any computer using only free software in all circumstances. That is our core mission, and we've been working towards that for about 40 years now. It started a little bit before 1985, and that is when Richard Stallman announced the GNU project. That was in 1983, and then in 1985 he established the Free Software Foundation to make sure that that project was streamlined and administered correctly, and to be the organization that could facilitate all the volunteers that were working on it and really build the GNU project into a professional system. And through that, through the years, the Free Software Foundation really grew and started expanding and taking on much more of an advocacy and philosophical role. Though we still hold the infrastructure for the GNU project, we still maintain all of that, but we also started doing a lot of advocacy on top of it. In 1989, the GNU General Public License was published, and in June and respectively November 2007, we published the version 3 of the GPL and the AGPL, which is the Affero GNU General Public License. And in October of this year, we will have had 40 years of the Free Software Foundation. Now, what does that mean? A program is free software if the program's users have 4 essential freedoms. So the freedom to run the programs for any purpose, the freedom to study how the program works and adapt it to your needs, the freedom to redistribute copies so that you can help your neighbor, and the freedom to improve the program and release your improvements to the public so that the whole community can benefit from it. Access to the source code is a precondition for these freedoms, which is why the GNU General Public License, of course, came into play. That is a license that goes under the nomer of copyleft. And what is copyleft? Copyleft is a general method for making a program or other work free and requiring all modified and extended versions of the program to be free as well, which means that we hold dear to the 4 freedoms, but we also make sure that the people that come after us have these freedoms as well. And this is where we diverge a little bit from those people that use the term open source. Free software and open source stand for almost the same range of programs, but they represent slightly different values. So in a world where we're using technology every single day to power almost everything we own, the underlying principles matter to us. It is why I am at the Free Software Foundation, and I think it's why a lot of people indeed use the term free software here as well. So free software really talks about the user's essential freedoms. It is about the freedom to run, copy, share, modify. We want those freedoms to perpetuate, and we think that that is the base of a free society. We want to help others, which is ingrained in freedom 2 of our four freedoms. We believe in social solidarity, which is where the sharing and the collaboration comes from. And we believe that ethics trumps profit margins every single time. So when we talk about the term open source, again, a lot of the software that we're talking about and a lot of the licenses that we're talking about actually come from the same group. It's just that our focus is really different. So when open source started, they called it a marketing campaign for free software, and they focused a lot on the practical values of free software, which of course I'll get to a little bit later, but they are things like collaboration, but also security, and the fact that you can use it again and again in different kinds of software as your core to build upon. And all of these things are practical things that are really easy and good for corporations to use and for organizations to build their code on. And you can't blame the free software people that come from that core group that started talking about open source for wanting free software to be adopted at every single moment and through every organization. Because of course we all understand that if you go to corporations, that's a way to get things more into the general society. But ever since then, we lost a little bit the core of why we started doing what we're doing. And we believe that using the term free software helps us bring us back to that core conversation. So in the use of the term open source, you avoid the confrontation. One of the things that we at the Free Software Foundation are used to is being the difficult person in the room and always going, but what about freedom? That is something that can be really annoying, but it's also really important to continue asking, and especially if you have the skill to develop software and if you have the capacity to make a change within your organization or within your collaboration or your collective that you're working within. So avoiding confrontation stops at the word share. A lot of people, of course, use permissive licenses, which is already a long way towards what we like to see in the world, because indeed you're sharing your source code. So you're being very collaborative in that sense, but it stops at share. And what we would like is for other generations and other organizations to be able to profit and continue to profit from that work that you're doing. By using copyleft and making sure that the generations that come after you also have the freedoms that you are enjoying. So there is increased confusion about the term open source as well. This is a bit of a different argument to stop using the term open source, but back in the day when open source started coming up, one of the biggest criticisms that free software got was that free software wasn't clear enough. Free software, of course, is a little bit confused with the word gratis, and this is not necessarily the case, and that is, of course, also why it doesn't necessarily speak to corporations. But these days, the roles are a little bit turned around, because these days the word open is a very popular word, and so the word open source is often confused with terms like open with source available, or within the machine learning community, open weights and things like that. And they don't actually mean what the open source initiative would like it to mean either. So another argument to just take a step back and talk about what it is that we want to be talking about and why do we care. And it's the 4 freedoms that we're talking about. We want people to use, to be able to study, to be able to run, to be able to share, and to be able to modify. And so the words free software are actually really useful for that these days. Another thing that you might want to consider, and this is just a bit of a tangent on this, but in the machine learning developments that are currently coming up, a lot of organizations look at, for example, Meta, are using the term open source. But there are a couple issues with that. One is that Llama is absolutely not open source, not by any definition. DeepSeek is also not open source. It is great that they are sharing a lot of their information, but they don't actually share their training data. And this is something that, of course, the OSI and the FSF are not necessarily on the same page on, because the FSF believes that training data is vital to be able to study your machine learning application. And if you really want to modify, and if you really want to be sure that this application is doing what you need it to do, you need access to the training data. Another thing to remember, and just to keep in mind when you're talking about machine learning developments, is that models are actually, it is actually still unclear whether or not you can actually license a model. So when you're looking at the licenses that are being spread around for free machine learning or machine learning applications these days, they are licensing it often to be certain, but it's not actually a legal thing yet. So watch that space. Why freedom? All of the things that we sold to corporations to want to use free software are autonomy, the right to copy and modify, the innovation and the progress that comes out of it. But when we talk about freedom, we talk about more than that. We talk about perpetuating freedom, making sure that you use a copyleft license so that the person that comes after you has the same freedoms as that you did. It's about having autonomy over your tools, making sure that you are the one that controls it, but also that if it breaks, you are the one that can fix it. The right to copy and modify, it stimulates competitions and it holds back monopoly. There is no vendor lock-in when you're talking about free software. You have a more independent chance to build in security or to check security and, for example, privacy. And it stimulates innovation and progress because we all build on the shoulders of others. And that is something that we have done for generations, and we hope in the Free Software Foundation that we can do that for generations to come as well. Why care? So in education, and this is why, we're in a university, so that's why I mentioned it first, also because it's written with an E. Education is, of course, the right to study. And how do you do that if you are using proprietary software, if you don't actually know what it is that you're looking at? And why are we not teaching people in schools every single day what the tools are that they use that are running our society these days? It is important that we think about the fact that if you teach someone to use a certain program in university or even in high school, or use a certain type of computer, it's very likely that they will continue to use that later because they don't have the skills to switch to another program. And one of the issues with that, of course, is also inequality. Because if you cannot afford the license to your, Adobe or Microsoft or something like that, you suffer an enormous setback when you have no longer got the license that your school has for you. And so free software is on multiple levels something that should be integrated into education. People have the right to study, and that is something that free software gives them. Data collection, manipulation, something like that is super popular, of course, these days. With free software, this is something that you're able to check much more and much better than with anything else. And it's safe to say that a lot of people that choose to build free software already have a better idea of what society is supposed to look like than any other, than the proprietary software builders do. The profit is not in the data sales, but it's actually in the sharing and the collaboration. The same goes for privacy and online safety. Progress, like I said, we build on the shoulders of others. Sustainability, so you can't really own your tools if you don't have access to their insights. So a lot of the free software work that we have been doing for the last 40 years now also extends to hardware, because you can't actually repair your tools if you don't have access to the software these days. And these days, of course, that goes to much more than just the computers, the desktops, and the laptops that we have on our desks, but it also goes and speaks about the fridges and the cars that we're driving in and all of those kinds of things. Sovereignty, of course, being less dependent on corporations, and especially if those corporations also have a lot of influence in different kinds of governments. Same for the techno-oligarchy and the monopolies. And then the most important one that sums it all up, it is user control. We care about the tools that we use, and so we should be able to control them. Talk about free software. Marshall McLuhan, who is a contemporary philosopher and media specialist, he says, in understanding media, it matters not why we are taking a train journey or where we are going on the train. These are irrelevant side issues which only divert us from noticing the train's real cultural significance. And its real significance is, the medium is the message, the way it changes our perception of the world. What is the dominance of proprietary software doing to our perception of society, ourselves, and what is right? I believe that profit margins are prioritized over privacy and user rights and dignified technology use these days. And I want you to all ask yourselves, are the tools that you are using and making helping to make a statement for change? That is my philosophy journey. And then I'll talk a little bit about the work that we do to try and teach everyone about this and convince people in the world to use free software, and also to make sure that, you know, our licenses are enforced. So at the FSF, we maintain the free software definition, which are, of course, the four freedoms, including how emerging technologies affect the four freedoms. So we are actually working right now on a statement of criteria on free machine learning definition. So if you have any interesting information or opinions about that, feel free to email us at info@fsf.org, because we are still working through that, we're still taking notes. It's a challenging position, but we differ from most other organizations, including the open source initiative, in where we are going with this, and that is, like I said before, we need access to the training data. We do fiscal sponsoring and infrastructure support for the GNU system and other community projects like Haskell or KDE. We run only free software for our operations and for anything we do, because we practice what we preach. So this goes from our internal documentation system to our phone systems and our video conferencing, and then we do a lot of advocacy. So we advocate, educate, teach, publish, and speak, like I do today, about free software and about things like DRM, privacy and surveillance, the right to repair, and this is just a list of the campaigns that we have at the FSF. So have a look at our web, www.fsf.org pages, and see what connects to you and why it is that you believe in free software. So then, of course, we go back to the licenses, which are the core of course, holding on to what free software is and making sure that we can perpetuate this freedom. So we are the license steward and publisher of the GNU family of licenses, which includes the GNU General Public License and the Affero General Public License. And we developed the GPL to make sure that it's free for all users. We have a free software directory, which holds about 17,000 free software packages right now. So we review them, we review their licenses, and it gets added to our directory. So if you're looking for any kind of program, it's likely you'll find it there. We do license review, and we hold a license list. When the new license comes out, we review it on whether or not it's free, whether or not it's compatible with other licenses, and we make a publication about that. We hold the frequently asked questions, which is about how you implement the or how the GNU General Public License is meant to be implemented. We are not lawyers, but we have 40 years of experience talking to and implementing our own licenses. And of course, we wrote them, so we know a little bit about them. And then we do enforcement on these issues as well. So, for example, one of the things that we recently did was publish and submit an amicus brief on the Neo4j versus Zoë case. It's missing a J, I just saw. But this is a case about Section 7 of the GPL. Someone added the commerce clause to the GPL, which is an additional restriction, which, of course, the GPL version Section 7, for the people that don't know this in this room, some people might know it, but there is a Section 7 that says that you can remove any additional restrictions that are placed on the GPL, and someone did that. And then they got sued over it. So we came out, of course, in support of this person and this action. We also hold the copyright for many of our GNU packages, and we take copyright assignments. We enforce our licenses and encourage the use of any legal mechanism available to users for obtaining complete and corresponding source code. In case anyone wonders, we believe that that goes beyond the right of the copyright holder. The FSF supports enforcement by any legal means available to users, and we work closely with organizations to bring them back into compliance. Now, how can you get involved? We have a lot of work to do. Technology is growing. We are seeing implementations more and more in everyday life. And so one of the things, I guess, that should have been on this list first is license your work under a copyleft license. The second is join us, join the FSF as an associate member. It's one of the best ways to support the FSF's work. It is like it's collective action is what we're doing, and we want you to join us. We have events, especially for FSF 40. We are doing a hackathon, for example, at the end of this year. We have an FSF 40 celebrations and other things that we're doing that you can find on our website. So join us, or volunteer or intern with the FSF or with GNU. There's always work to be done, technical or not. And then I have space for questions.
Hi.
Hi.
I love the FSF. So this is not a legal question. I know the legalities of this question are not established, I think, anywhere on earth yet. But if the FSF had their way of snapping their finger and changing legalization, what would the FSF like to be the legal status of using free software as training data for? Because, you know, like on one hand, you say that being able to study software is one of the goals and freedoms. But of course, on the other hand, you could say, okay, but that's for humans to study, not for machines. So if you could decide what should be the legal framework around free software in training sets, what would you want it to be?
Sorry, if the legal framework around?
Like, around using free software or like free, like copyleft in training, inclusion of copyleft things in training data for machine learning. What would you like the legal stance to be on that?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a challenging question, because where we are at this moment, of course, there is a lot of development that was done in machine learning that is already out there, and it's driven the technology forward. But I genuinely believe that if the user is to profit from what machine learning does and is, then training data has to be available. And that is what I think the legal stance should be as well. Well, no, that's not completely fair. That's what I think free software is and continues to be. I mean, honestly, if I were to say that the legal status should be that everything should be free software, I mean, why not? Right? Let's do it, yeah.
just for clarification, will that mean that if somebody uses the Linux kernel to train an LLM, should the LLM completely be GPL?
So no, not so. When we're talking about the LLM, like you have the different sections. Of course, you have the training data, which isn't actually ideally licensed on a software license at all. So it would have a license that fit, like a Creative Commons license, for example. And then you're talking about the model, which isn't actually licensable yet at all. So that's something that we might be.
But if you are training on this Linux source code,
yeah,
that is a GPL license.
Sorry, if I'm training on the
Linux source code,
on the kernel. Legal source code.
Yeah, the kernel has a GPL license, right?
Yeah.
Is it what,
yeah.
GPL 3?
Sorry. Yes.
So if I train on that, should the GPL extend to the whole model, the architect or the weights and all the training data that they use?
Oh yes. Well, yes, the GPL. Well, like I said, not everything is ideally licensable under a software license, but yes, we do think that we should include the training data, the weights, and the parameters, and the whole.
No,
yeah.
but the problem that Oscar and I are bringing up is that your training data can contain things that are licensed under a software license, and some of those
yes.
licenses are going to be copyleft licenses. Yes. So that's so if you can have the Linux kernel, because if you look at it, it's just text, and it's going to be in the training set, but of course it's licensed under the GPL. So yeah, that's the question. So what would the FSF stance?
You're talking about license compatibility there, like the fact that it could. I mean, that's an issue that we have to think about further, but. A lot of licenses are compatible with that, and some are not. That's true. But that's the same for the situation that we're in with software as well. Ideally, of course, we'd get to a situation where we could build it would be great if we could build a framework that would allow for a higher level of compatibility, perhaps, than in software. But Yeah.
So why are you afraid to just say that if you have GPL software in your training data, then the training weights should also be GPL licensed? Is that going too far in your opinion? I thought that would be the obvious thing to say. That okay, well, if you use GPL input, you're screwed, and now your weights are GPL.
Well, the reason why I'm a little hesitant to say that is because a lot of data that is being trained on is already licensed. So it's going to be very limiting to say only GPL licensed data can be used.
But I'm talking about the other direction. That's not what happens, right? Company comes, they don't give a fuck about free software. They take all the data they can get their hands on, including free software, because of course they can access that. That's fine. It was originally meant to be accessed. But then they train their models on them. And then they say, okay, well, this is now just a bunch of numbers. I don't need to honor any licenses because it's just a bunch of doubles. I don't know what's in there, just numbers, just use it. And then it becomes a way of disconnecting the original free software or copyleft content from this bag of numbers that is now taught to be or pretending to be unrelated to the original software.
Yeah, no, yeah. Right. So you're talking about the processed training data, and I'm talking about the training data that comes before that even. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I'm fine with saying that should be part of the license.
I have a very concrete version of that question.
Okay.
I train my model on the source code for Emacs.
Yeah.
So now it basically has some kind of binary version of Emacs inside its model.
Yeah.
Am I then supposed to distribute the source code of Emacs together with the model because it has Emacs in it?
Yeah.
I have a rather philosophical or legal question. So imagine in a world where the state-sanctioned copyright law is not doesn't exist or simply not enforceable, like the LLM type of conundrum. So my question is, for the cause of software freedom or free software, do you think it's a net better society or it's going to be a problem? Foundation's view or your personal view, whichever.
I mean, I think that's more of a personal question than it is a, because it's really a question about how much I believe in people, I think. I believe there is a subsection of society that wants to do the right thing, that believes, just as I do, that, we make things that you should share so that other people can learn from it. I believe that there is also a subsection of society that would not make that choice. And you put those two groups in front of each other without the regulations that we have these days, I don't know where we'd go. I think I prefer the situation as it is, maybe. But that is not to say that I think copyright is growing in a way that that's not okay. Like now also, for example, with the training data, the way we're seeing people protest about it is really people are saying, you're using my art or my work or my software to train your model, which of course is something that I have respect for, that you fear that you won't get the credit that you deserve because that is done that way. But technically, that's a right that we have under copyright right now. And to limit copyright, to take away that right to read, even though it's for a machine, is again a step towards limiting people's freedoms. And I do have fear around that. So in an ideal world, we would have maybe less strict copyright, less long copyright, and we would all adhere to copyleft.
I'm over here. I have like a completely basic question around licensing. So what's the stance of FSF on, lots of companies have like a blanket ban on GPL or any copyleft licenses because they're afraid it's gonna make them have to open source their internal stuff if they're not careful. So if I'm like writing some library that I want to make a profit from, I mean, the copyleft doesn't, the GPL doesn't say I can't do that, but then I'm of course like blocked by companies not wanting to have that. So my best approach right now is to say, oh, this thing is dual licensed. It's AGPL for anybody to use, but if you're a company, please contact this email and we can make like a separate agreement, monthly, yearly, whatever. And then you get like whatever copyright you want. Is that like something the FSF approves of, or is the FSF like, oh, but then the company can take your code and just use it internally, and then the world doesn't profit anymore? But I feel like since I GPL'd it, they had the chance to say we want to take part in the sharing, and anybody else can also just use it for their personal stuff. So I feel like that's a good compromise.
Yeah, so the FSF believes all of those things. I would love to say to you, don't do that. You know, go to the company and say, no, you have to use my source code and with my license, and that's why. And I have all that right. And then you will still pay me, and you will still not, go to a different developer and have them proprietarily license my or a similar kind of work. So, I mean, in an ideal world, of course. So I would say try it. Try how far you get, and then if you don't, you can fall back to a different solution. If an organization says yes, even once, that's a win. We at the FSF, we're at the far end of the spectrum. We're the people that say, do not use proprietary software. It is all bad. You cannot, if you step into this world, it will make your boundaries more diluted. It will create it contributes to a world that we don't want to live in. And I also genuinely believe that, but we also know that we all live in the real world and that people need to make money. And if that means that you need to compromise to be able to do good, then as the FSF, I'm not going to go and say to you, go ahead. But as me, I say, of course we understand.
So over the past few years, there's been a really big development in the kind of technical capabilities in the gaming community around reverse engineering and things like this, where people are so fond of old games that they will do things like take the binary dump of the cartridge and produce a decompilation and then release that under a free software license and so on. And so this is like a group of technically extremely capable people who are like taking the full freedoms for themselves because they haven't been offered them at the point of purchase. And then there's a smaller but slowly growing trend of companies releasing old engine code and things like this under copyleft licenses. So, for example, EA Games released, EA, right, released a bunch of old Command and Conquer engine code under GPLv3 a few months back. And except for a couple of games which are presumed lost. So I have two sort of questions here. One is, has the FSF been able to do any sort of outreach to gaming community specifically? Because I found the median computer user is very much like, oh, why do I care? I can solve the problem in front of me. I can write my document or whatever. But these people who are really digging into the guts of how their games work. They want to study the games. They want to change how they work and do all of the things that the Four Freedoms talk about. Has there been any messaging or any successful engagement outreaching in that direction? And has there been any efforts to getting companies to release things like at least engine code, if not assets, under free software licenses before they're just like nearly forgotten and a lost CD in an archive drawer somewhere?
Yeah, so it's funny because a lot of like the question that you're asking is about video games, but it expands to anything, of course, that is no longer used. But we have some connection with some gaming communities, and that actually comes from an effort that we have with the directory, because a lot of those people actually connected with us through them, through the directory, to get that into our directory so people can find it. And that led to some discussion about, like, if you have a free software program that only runs proprietary programs, is it still free software? Like, I would say that we have not done enough to really reach out to these communities and talk to these communities, because we know that the gaming community is actually one that is very free software friendly, and we should probably be talking to them more, but we haven't yet.
I would have characterized people as more receptive rather than I think they would. I'd characterize them probably like you, maybe not the people who write mods and stuff like that, but the people who play, just want to play games and download mods and stuff. I'd characterize them as potentially receptive rather than friendly. Like they'd be like, if you said, this is like, here is a message that helps you do the things that you clearly value because you want to take this game and make it yours and play it the way you want to play it and so on. That, I think, is somewhere that you could get a bunch of new and younger blood into supporting the movement and its goals. And then, oh, by the way, have you noticed that this is also like making the rest of your life harder because your computers are increasingly locked down and your computing is at the pleasure of whoever you bought your hardware from and so on. I
agree. It's a very good. It's a very good thought, I think, because you're right. Like in the gaming community, the concept of sharing, of course, is so much more important, so much more ingrained than in a lot of other communities. So it makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Hi.
So in a lot of corporations, it seems like, especially ones that aren't software companies, the software that we write for them is a means, not an end. And then things like the legal departments, they just have no concept of free software, and the confusion around open and free and the models. Is there anything that we can be doing to be reaching out to, in education, to lawyers, like in law departments, to get them to understand this earlier, so that when they go to work for big company that writes software because they need to, but not because that's what they do, that there's more understanding?
Yes, I mean, there is more that we could do, but there's always more that we can do, unfortunately. But yes, so the conversation, but it's, yes, so you're talking about lawyers, yes, but also computer science, organizations, things like that, like all of it. It's not just lawyers, I think, that need to have a better understanding. I think the part of how much software is ingrained in our life is often escaping people. And you're right, it's something that people don't actually think about. They just use it as a tool and implement it mindlessly almost. And then the consequences start trickling in, which is why some people don't want to use the GPL, and because all of a sudden they have responsibilities, and then, oh no. So yes, there is more education we can do. And there is a like, as we go further, you notice now in the US at least, and here I think in Europe more as well, that there's more court cases coming to light that discuss the GPL and copyleft, and those will help educate people as well. For a very long time, there wasn't a lot of case law related to copyleft, and so the intention of the GPL was a very important educational tool, which it still is, of course, because we also influence a lot of these court cases. But the fact that there is more knowledge coming now and that there are more decisions being made on it is, on the one hand, a little bit scary, because who knows what they'll decide. But on the other hand, it does establish some educational resources that lawyers will have to dig into.
Hello. You spoke about these 4 rights to run, to study, to improve, and to share. Often when there are rights, there's the dual, there's the obligations that go with it. So what are the obligations that the FSF wants engineers to associate with those rights? I can give you more context and more detailed example if you want. So one example that comes to mind, well, there are 2. There's one that I was discussing earlier, which is you have a company which releases their training data, but it's a 5 petabyte download. And so in principle, you have access to this, but in practice, you're not going to be able to have access to the training data. So there's malicious compliance like that. And then also, there have been incidents with supply chain attacks on open source software where people are relying on... There's an example from a few years ago where someone worked out what language was being used by users of their library and then corrupted data based on that language, which had enormous consequences. So we as engineers, we have we change how the world looks, and we also have responsibilities in how we do that. When we're discussing enabling other people to run, study, improve, and share these tools, we also have responsibilities, and I'd like to know what the thinking is in the FSF on that.
So I'll do your first example first, the training data, which I think we can extend to different examples as well. So our license tells you to make the source code available. And if I have a simple desktop at home, then yes, I cannot process a lot of training data that is going to train an LLM. But my license is expansive, and so it covers also machine learning that doesn't have training data that is very large amounts. It can be a simple one-way tool that I can actually download the training data for. And if I do have a supercomputer, because I have a rich uncle and he died, and I have a stubborn curiosity in computing, and LLMs are my new fad, then I can download it. And that's you chose the license, and it comes with a responsibility. It comes with a lot of positive as well, because the idea of building free software is something that comes with a really sort of positive feeling. Like, we all use it with pride, right? And you can profit from that as long as you take the responsibility to make sure that indeed you perpetuate this freedom. And it's not up to us to decide who that user is going to be. And that's also why the FSF has taken, for example, a stance against the ethical licenses, because we don't believe that we have anything to say about whether you can or cannot use this particular software in your, I don't know, shopping experience or your whatever you want. So, or to do good or bad, or that is up to us to decide what that is. Like, we just want you to make the source code available.
Hello, I'm a little torn. I'm so behind all those principles. I think all information should be free. But I'm hungry all the time, and so are my children. So really the question is this, like, ideally, in an ideal world, but before the arrival of true communism, what would be the model for me to, like, not charge for my software and still stay fed? I mean, I know there's a companies for whom the software is means. I work for one of those. That's how I square my circle. But there's also place for software products that are products, right? So what would be, like, is there a vision for that and what it is?
I mean, we're getting very close to the question that was asked before about, can I dual license my tools? It's not up to me to tell you how to live your life. I think if you work for, think about how you can do better. That's all I can ask. It's like, if you're working for an organization that is a fully proprietary software organization and you need to feed your children, then I am not going to tell you to not do that. But I am going to ask you, hey, maybe you can use this skill and volunteer for a GNU project as well. Or any other free software project that is out there. If you have a tool that you built, something that is useful for others, then you can copyleft it and make sure that people use it. There are a lot of examples of projects that are out there. I can mention, like, a whole bunch of them, for Inkscape or the GNU project, that you can that are actually that live in a fiscal sponsorship situation, and so they live on donations, and people are willing to donate if you have a tool like that.
No, yeah, I do that, but I mean, like, the proprietary company that I work for, in the meantime, their product is still not free.
Yeah.
Right. So are you saying, like, it shouldn't be, like, not all software should be free until the arrival of full communism?
No, of course no, it should be, but it is not, right? So I'm not, like, if I stomp my feet, it's not going to change the world. But what is going to change the world is if you use your skill and your advocacy and your way of describing what you think the world should like with your management, for example, or use your free time to give back to organizations and to projects and communities that deserve this and that do support these free software philosophies, because it's through that way of shaping collective action that we make sure that we put pressure on these proprietary organizations to change their licenses, to change their ways. I mean, it's the only way. It's just keep knocking on their door and go, what you're doing is actually wrong. I know that I'm part of it, but you should listen to me.
So one small point on this. So I sort of have the idea that people are sort of thinking this is like charity work, right? We're doing something good for the world. But there is a certain personal advantage for me as a small software developer for a big corporation to have a copyleft license, namely that I can continue to use this later as well for something. Not just everyone else, but I'm also part of this everyone else.
Yeah.
So there are many instances of cases where, for example, you work in a place, you put your blood and sweat into something, but then you have no control over this and how this is even, you can't even do anything about it. So there is, I guess, for us as software developers, an advantage to having this. It's not just,
and it's getting collaboration from others as well.
Exactly,
yes,
yeah.
Who are, outside of their proprietary software job looking for something good to do.
Thank you. I had another question, and that's related to that's related to a project that FSF is doing on the European level, which is called Public Money, Public Code.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that, because you didn't mention it in your presentation, and how that? In my opinion, that would work in the current environment that the world is in, with America being, moving over, closing the borders a bit on Europe, and Europe could become stronger for it if that would prosper, in my opinion.
Sure. So the FSFE and FSF are two different organizations, so that's why I didn't mention their campaign in ours. But Public Money, Public Code is a campaign that the Free Software Foundation Europe is running successfully also to talk to governments about digital sovereignty, basically. What they say is if the citizen has paid for it, then they should also own it and therefore be able to access it and see what's happening, and governments should be transparent about the kind of software that is being used to run organizations. And in Europe, this is something that is that connects more with people and with governments, because a lot of the big corporations that we know, the big tech, is of course not from Europe, and so we understand much more than the American citizens that this is something that isn't necessarily a good thing if we have Meta telling our government what to do.
I just wanted to make one small plug to sort of bring the venue and the discussion back together. There's this issue with funding these public works. There's the dilemma where everyone benefits and you wait for somebody else to do the work. And so you need some way of, you need some mechanism for encouraging cooperation and collaboration and mutual assurance that, to encourage that cooperation. There is a project called Snowdrift.coop, written in Haskell, that is trying to develop a funding mechanism for public works, free software. And I've been involved with that off and on for a long time. It's still being actively developed. And come talk to me if you want to hear more about it.
I think we even plugged this on our website.
Ah, perfect. Because I know that Aaron Wolf is quite active with the FSF.
Yeah. He is.
Thanks, Brian. So I think we should maybe go on with our program. Are there any burning questions? It's really great that people have questions. I didn't expect this. This 1, 2, and then we're done, right? Anyone else? Okay, good.
Another one from me. So there's a maneuver that I think has been called the license rug pull, where you're a company, you offer a dual licensed product under some copyleft license or under a BSD style license or whatever, and you take contributions from the community under a contributor license agreement or it's usually a CLA rather than an assignment. And then you get to a point where you go, oh, the funding's run out. And then this happened, for example, with Terraform and I think Redis as well. And one line of defense against this is to use a strong copyleft license when you set up your project and you have you take people's contributions, but you don't take a copyright assignment from them. So you have a big soup of GPL license code, and everyone is participating through the GPL rather than by assigning contributions to the project maintainers. And then that gives you, as the project becomes more popular, it becomes harder to execute the license rug pull. My question is, in the situation that the gentleman in the blue shirt was talking about, where he's trying to offer a dual licensed project, have you seen anyone successfully set up a mechanism that allows someone to dual license to keep a project funded without leaving it vulnerable to the rug pull by concentrating all of the licensing power in one person or one company, or some way to capture, like, yes, I can dual license this for under limited purposes without opening it up to the full rug pull, where you take everyone's contributions and then you relicense it under like the business software license or a source available license or something like that.
Not really. So when you, sorry, I'm just trying to process your question. When you contribute to a project and you don't assign copyright, the copyright stays with you. So it is very difficult for an organization to do anything with that project if they have taken a lot of contributions outside of their own copyright, because technically they will have a project with a lot of distributed copyright over a lot of different holders. So you can't just relicense it, or you can't just, so that and it's not that simple, because you do actually have to take legal action as a copyright holder to then go and step up to a corporation and say, I don't want you to relicense this project because it has code for me in it. But technically they can't pull the rug from under you like that, because if you haven't assigned your copyright, it is still yours. Now, yes, the other way around, it also happens that when you do assign copyright, it becomes easier to relicense, and there is a potential for relicensing. Because, to be clear, like, it is handy if you assign your copyright to whatever organization you're contributing to, because it does make it easier for them to, make sure that the project is sustainable for the future. But if you have done that, then yes, you're right. They have a possibility to relicense it in a way that makes it non-free, and that is a challenge. So there is a lot of faith that you put into the project with it that there's very little you can do about that.
Thank you.
Just wondering if the Free Software Foundation has considered or is considering suing the LLM companies not to use GPL code.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of your question. What was?
If the Free Software Foundation is considering or has considered suing the LLM companies not to use GPL code. Like, there are copyright holders right now suing them?
Yeah,
maybe joining that, or
no. We don't want anyone to violate the GPL. So we don't want anyone to recreate GPL code without licensing it properly. But like I said before, training on the GPL is in line with the GPL, because we allow for the freedom to study. And if you study GPL code, then you can do that either with a machine or as a person. It's not the same, but we are not.
I go and study the Linux kernel. Maybe in 200 years I am able to do something approximating that.
Yeah.
The machine can do it in seconds. So
true, but you're doing it with a machine already. Like a lot of the we are not in a position to say this is the kind of machine that cannot read the GPL. What I mean is that we're using, like, when you're talking about machine learning, you are speaking about large language models, but there can also be a lot of machine learning tools that are built right now that are using.
Any machine learning algorithm that is trained on GPL should be GPL.
So again, I think we diverge a little bit in the opinion of. So I think it's important to keep the distinction in mind of like what goes into the LLM and what comes out of it. What comes out of it, I am very open and willing to talk about how that should be licensed, but I can't I can't say that machine learning shouldn't be trained on GPL code. I don't know. Maybe in a year from now I'll think differently about it. But right now our position is very much into the this is in line with what copyright allows, and we as the Free Software Foundation don't believe that we should be limiting copyright. And I agree with you that there's a difference between having machine learning systems train and me reading a book, and that is potentially worth considering. But at this moment, we are still in a place where we believe that is in line with giving freedom, because this GPL code, whether you can read it, a lot of it, and do it very freely, it can be used for a lot of good, and that was our intention originally when we made the license.
Thank you very much, Zoe. There were many questions. That was really great. Yeah, so we have one or two administrative announcements before you're allowed to go for lunch. Okay, let's wait till the beamer's up. Yeah, got it. Got it. Okay, here's the schedule for the rest of the day. We have the food trucks outside. They're set up, right, Jasper?
Yes, they're ready.
Cool. So food trucks are ready. At 1, there'll be the Nix track with Malte. And at 3:30, there'll be the project presentations, and we'll end with a small closing ceremony. A few announcements. One, Pedro and I and some other people will be having a little interview session with some people. If you would like to come and be subjected to this interview, please come to the registration desk. It'll just be about Zurich, what do you like, what you didn't like, trying to get a little feel for the event, and yeah, we'll post it. We'll see if this is something nice that we can post. Yeah. What else? Anything else, Jasper? Yeah, okay, cool. Then enjoy lunch. See you.